Lately, Pokemon has entered a struggle, with game development becoming bigger and bigger and bigger these last few generations, and every game and developer trying to one-up the last game. It's obvious that Pokemon has been really struggling to really meet up with the expectations that I think they themselves want, and even the fans want. With some of the recent games being very lackluster, and some of them just being the bare minimum for what their game needs to be. With the release of Scarlet and Violet, there were obviously some things wrong with the game. And with a few weeks after the release of the game, they actually put out a statement acknowledging a lot of course, the glitches and bugs and the performance of the game, but there was obviously something core to the game that I felt was personally missing. There's nothing really to explore besides new Pokemon and shinies here and there. It's like Game Freak raised the shiny rates on purpose just so they could give people a reason to keep playing the game. Which, I mean, it kind of worked on me. I unfortunately have like 200 hours on Violet, mostly because I really like shiny hunting new Pokemon. Like, see, this is how disappointing the newer games are. All old Pokemon games are like becoming increasingly expensive on eBay. Granted, I think that's just because DS games are starting to hit that renaissance phase, and nostalgia is hitting people like a truck. Shit. But I got 230 bands just sitting in my drawer, bro. I can't believe the rates on like Pokemon Black, man. That's crazy. It's like, why shiny hunt in Scarlet and Violet when you can just do this? You can do this. You call this not legit? Oh, look at the OT. That's my name. I spent 2 years on that. I love the series so very deeply. As you can tell, I've been very critical of their most recent stuff. And it hasn't just been Scarlet and Violet. To me, I think Pokemon has kind of entered this phase, their struggle phase, as I should phrase again. It started with them kind of going into the 3DS, but I wouldn't say it started with X and Y. It started with Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon, to me, just felt not as replayable as the other games. The game's story took up a huge bulk of the game, where you're basically sitting down large chunks of the game, just chatting. I never played Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, though I've heard that those are a better version of that game. They speed it up. There's actually some interesting stuff to do in there. There's actual like post game. But even so, this was around the time when the Switch was coming out. They announced this game alongside a Pokken DX for the Switch. So they were obviously familiar with the console. And so to me, why didn't we just use those resources on developing for like Sword and Shield? Because Sword and Shield obviously needed it. There is one outlier, I'll give them credit though. Legends Arceus has a creative hook to it and actually uses the openness of the game to its advantage. Now, the game wasn't fully open. I honestly think the open areas really helped them be able to flesh out and actually give effort to each separate area instead of making this huge chunk of world with each area of it feeling just very underutilized. Looking back at this game coming out before it, it's baffling to me how these games released the same year and are basically two vastly different comparisons of like Pokemon Company as a whole. With Legends Arceus feeling like they took the actual open world concept or the openness of the game and used it for an actually decent gameplay loop where you're just filling out the Pokedex. That's the game. You're not going around collecting badges and just getting your team for the thing. You're actually filling out the side thing. That's the main goal. With those leading to little scenarios where you end up talking to different clans back in the past. You actually fight different trial bosses that each can have different fights to them. Like, you actually, like, fight the Pokemon in this. Like, you're not, like, just turn-based. Them bitches can come at you. So it felt like, to me, just Scarlet and Violet just felt like so many steps back in comparison that they just wanted to get the open world Pokemon game and just sell that out as fast because they knew people were still hankering for the true open world Pokemon game. But I think we could have waited a few years. Like, after seeing it, I think we could have waited just a few more years. But even so, looking back at Game Freak actually acknowledging the problems with Scarlet and Violet, all of their previous works having very different struggles and criticisms that people keep pointing to and are reappearing throughout newer titles, we've entered this sort of phase with Game Freak, Pokemon Company, whatever you want to associate them as, of utter silence. Nothing but the wind and a clef key cry occasionally. With their most recent announced game being back in February of this year, being Pokemon Legends Z through A. And man, was I not excited for this. After Scarlet and Violet, and then its respective DLC, it just felt like that they really didn't care about Scarlet and Violet anymore. There was no point to playing the DLC. It just felt like more of the main game, and I already was not in love with that. You can go check out my videos about the first DLC. I made 2 whole videos about the first part of the DLC. I was gonna make a video about the second part. I did stream it, but I think I hated it so much, I played it for like 2 hours and I just turned it off. Distinct biomes. We have the nice total subtropical savanna vibe. That's the first, like, minute when you enter this area, by the way. I was just like, what's the point? I'm just playing more Scarlet and Violet. Oh my goodness. But even then, it just kind of seemed to me that after that DLC, they're just going in, here's the next game. All right, we're just back into the same old cycle after that huge apology and after they say they're gonna fix it. But it isn't releasing this year. It's releasing early 2025, and I'd bet you a lot of money that I wouldn't be surprised if it's like January 1st, man. January 1st of 2025. So the announcement happened, and so I was expecting like, oh, we're gonna get like trailers every 3 months, getting ready for the build-up. But no. We haven't gotten a single trailer since that day. And it is very reassuring, I will say the least. It shows that Game Freak obviously knows that their games and their whole image is in hot water. Very hot water indeed, that I think they know that they will lose a large chunk of their consumer base if the game, just on its first trailer, looks bad. And this is coming from the same company, where leading up to Sun and Moon's release date, every single week, we got a new trailer for a new Pokemon, a new mechanic, a new character, just something new, like every Friday. But actually getting to the game, there wasn't a lot of new, in a sense. We had already really seen most of the game. Most of the Ultra Beasts were announced before launch. I think though the starters were leaked before launch, I know that, but I know the starters mid-evolutions were shown before launch. There was very little that was not shown to everybody. So seeing them being this quiet and this so protective of footage of the game, there hasn't been shown off in any directs, anything regarding gameplay footage, or even like just gameplay details. Like the only thing we know about it is that Megas are back based on that one teaser, and that it takes place in the Kalos region, which gives Pokemon X and Y actually a run for its money, because the problem with X and Y, I guess, is that it was just never finished, which I guess is the same for most games. Maybe it did start with X and Y. My fault. I will say there have been a few breaks of the silence, and we'll get into those in a second, because if they're actually going to take this super seriously and really approach this with different eyes and really give the fans something special, this is the way to do it. This, I think, is their last chance. Like I said, I was very, very disappointed with Scarlet and Violet. I enjoyed the game, like I do with every Pokemon game, but I don't really remember too much about the game, especially in its middle half. Like, once you got to Area 0, the game kind of actually takes a turn, and it actually has some creative shit behind it. But everything else is just by the books, bare minimum. Here's your open world Pokemon game. And it's mostly prone from Pokemon's yearly development cycle, which this game is breaking out of. Like, there were no new games for this year. So that was the first, like, big deal. It's like, oh, they're actually taking a year off. But like I said, Legend Z through A is coming out early 2025, so you know that's January 1st. But there have been breaks in their silences. They can't escape from their roots. You think Junichi Masuda can escape from one game this year? By game, I mean it's just a Pokemon trading card game on the phone. So this year they held their annual Worlds event where they have a bunch of different Pokemon competitors through the card games, Pokemon Go, and the actual video games. But this year at Worlds, they had some announcements. Every year, they always have something to announce, and this year was no different. And so they announced it like anything else. They said, oh, at the ending ceremony, we're going to show off a few things. All right, we want everyone to show up. We're going to live stream it. It's going to be a great time. But everyone got excited again. They're like, oh, are they going to show Z through A? Are they actually going to show us like maybe like a Pokemon, a Mega? Like, ooh, what are they going to do? So the ending ceremony came and Ishihara walked on stage and he had a few announcements to give off. Oh, you brought everyone here. You had commentators before saying they didn't know what it was. They weren't telling. Like they were keeping this very uptight and zipped up. What could this be? All it was a trailer for the new Pokemon trading card game on the phone and some Pokemon Go updates. And apparently Unite. Do you not play Unite? Because Pokemon thinks you play Unite. Have you not gotten on your daily cafe mix yet? Because you gotta play Pokemon Cafe Mix every day and catch up with every new update that comes out every year. And then their other break in the silence this week, actually. This was just breaking news when I was actually coming up with the concept of this video. Over the last 9 months, Pokemon and Nintendo have been investigating Palworld, or Pocket Pair, the developers of the game, over many things. And from what I have seen and from what I have read, it seems they're suing them on gameplay elements. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense. I always knew Palworld was probably going to get into some hot water based on their designs. Look, we can go on and on and on about how their designs are different. They are very much like different creatures, different names, they're different like styles, but there are some details on there that are blatantly from other Pokemon. They're blatantly using a similar art style to the games. Like if we look at a lot of other monster catching genre games like Shin Megami Tensei or Yokai Watch, those designs are wildly different, in my opinion, than the Pokemon's sort of stylized version of their animals, or creatures in a sense. And from how much money Pokemon makes from their merchandise, from goddamn plushies they sell on their goddamn website and stores, it seemed like to me that that was one thing I feel like they couldn't get away with. But the game itself is barely like Pokemon. Sure, there's a world and creatures to run around and capture with little orbs, but the whole gameplay loop is more akin to something like Rust, or even so, like Ark. The game is more like Ark, if I'm going to be fair. Nothing about the gameplay elements is what I think Nintendo and Pokemon should be going after them for, because the game itself is a pretty cut and dry Ark and Rust Unity flip. I mean, like, it just shows how the bar is super low for Pokemon. So Nintendo, and even in an extension the Pokemon Company, going after these guys, especially right now with the image of Pokemon and how Palworld has sort of rose from that, it just seems like a very big gut punch into something that should be a time when you're really focusing on your next big game that is like make or break for the series. If Legends Z through A looks anything like the last few titles and how they treated those, I'm really not interested in playing those games at all anymore. I found other games to scratch that itch for me, in a sense. I've recently got into Persona 3. That recent remake was phenomenal. It got me into the series. I played through 5. I then got Shin Megami Tensei 5. I've been playing through that. I just love the whole monster sort of catching aspect and training those up, and the designs in them are super bizarre and unique that only like Shin Megami Tensei and even just Atlas I think can really pull off. And so if Z through A just decides to take the same path as the past games, I think it'll really start to affect from some of their largest fans and people that have supported their games from the very beginning, and it might start to bite them in the butt. but that's coming from something like Scarlet and Violet, which was the highest like selling Pokemon game in like the first few weeks, and it is critically one of the lowest rated Pokemon games of all. Like it's a whole cycle that I think if Pokemon Company doesn't take the right steps, it's going to end up with, I think, sales dramatically dropping, in my opinion. I hope people can be sensible for once. But with them really keeping quiet about the game, really not showing anything besides that first announcement on Pokemon Day, I wouldn't say I'm fully excited. I'm just interested to see what the game is, because there's obviously something here that they're not telling us for a reason. They really want to knock it out of the park with this one to me, and I think they're really taking all the criticisms that those last few games had to heart and really showing how they can make a modern, new Pokemon game. And that's just about it. That's just about it. The Palworld stuff is its whole thing, and I just thought I would include that because it is so baffling. And if they win that lawsuit via gameplay rules, Atlas, if you're watching this video, Shin Megami Tensei originated Pokemon. Elemental moves, super weaknesses, that's all you. You're just gonna let that money go to waste? They're just lying over there taking it from you, and they're going over suing poor new guys over just using just a few little things. I love Nintendo, but if they actually win this could be a huge deal for like gaming in general. Like it could be a huge thing where just developers are suing themselves left and right. Anyways, go on, get out of here. Go play Shin Megami Tensei. Go play Persona if you've been really aching something that scratches that same itch. Trust me, I literally bought it off a whim, and I can't stop thinking about these games. They're incredible. It's just it's like I don't what am I supposed to do with this? Like what am I supposed to do with this? I don't even know why I started this fan club in the first place. This is your